Are you ready to explore exciting careers in neuroscience and neurotechnologies? Then join me, your podcast host, Dr. Milena Krastenskaya, or simply Dr. K, and my amazing guests on the Neurocareers Doing the Impossible podcast. Discover what it takes to turn the impossible into reality. Tune in now to a thrilling episode number 36. Dear Neurocareers podcast listeners, welcome to an exciting journey into the world of careers in neuroscience and neurotechnologies. Today, we're diving deep into the field of neuromodulation and neuroengineering, a cutting-edge area of research that holds the promise of revolutionizing patient care for conditions ranging from chronic pain to Parkinson's disease. And who would be better to guide us through this exciting field than Dr. Ilknur Telkes, assistant professor at Florida Atlantic University and head of the Telkes Lab. With her unique academic background in neuroscience and neural engineering, Dr. Telkes has spent years pioneering new ways to use electrophysiological signal recordings and analysis to improve patient outcomes. Her groundbreaking work in deep brain stimulation, spinal cord stimulation, and biomarker discovery has earned her numerous awards, including the prestigious Kumar Award at NANS. But what does it really take to succeed in a field as complex and dynamic as neuromodulation? What challenges and opportunities are on the horizon for aspiring neuroscientists and neuroengineers? And how can the latest advances in technology help us unlock the full potential of the human brain? Join us as we delve into these questions and more with Dr. Telkes and learn about the exciting possibilities that lie ahead in the field of neuromodulation and neuroengineering. Whether you are a seasoned researcher or simply fascinated by the mysteries of the brain, this episode is sure to spark your curiosity and inspire you to reach new heights in your own career in neuroscience and neurotechnologies. Welcome, Dr. Telkes. It's a great pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you very much for agreeing to come to our podcast. Can you give us a quick introduction and let our listeners know where you are joining us from and share any interesting facts or information about the place or institution you're associated with?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. K, for invitation and such a nice introduction. As you mentioned, I am an assistant professor at the Florida Atlantic University Medical College. I'm a new assistant professor. I moved to Florida about 8 months ago. I was a postdoctoral fellow in Albany Medical College. I was working with Julie Plitzes at Albany Med, but she's the dean of the medical college right now at Florida Atlantic University. So we are still working together in the neuromodulation field. As you mentioned, I have neuroscience and engineering trainings. Received my BS in biomedical sciences with the focus of neuroscience. And then I received my master's degree in health informatics with a neuroscience focus. At the time of my master's degree, I was working with rodent models, Parkinson disease models, and probabilistic learning in these animal models, how the Parkinson disease affecting some cognitive processes. Over time, my interest turned to human studies. I wanted to get involved in clinical research more and more, and I decided to switch fields. And I started my postdoctoral education in biomedical engineering field. It had its challenges, difficulties, but I'm glad that I made that choice. And I received my PhD in biomedical engineering, more specifically neural engineering and rehabilitation at University of Houston. And I started working with humans. I continued my research in Parkinson disease. I actually started closely working with neurosurgery and neurology departments. From that day, I'm still working with these departments closely.
Thank you so much, Dr. Telkes. You mentioned challenges in switching the field and transition from one field to another. What was the main challenge and what helped you to overcome it?
I was interested in brain perception, consciousness, yes, but I had not much knowledge on the engineering aspects of developing tools, computational aspects of it. I think that was the biggest challenge. The master degree that I had helped me to get familiar with programming languages, tools that we can develop using engineering approaches. It was a challenge, but I guess if I knew better at the time, I would take more courses from different departments while I was getting my BS degree, maybe computational biology or more related to signal processing or maybe from electrical engineering or mechanical engineering fields. So it would help me to more ready to develop medical technology devices, tools, how to interpret the data, these kind of things.
Thank you so much for mentioning that because actually we have people who are contacting me and asking about that specific transition, yes, from one field to another. So the courses that you are mentioned is great advice for those people. Thank you so much for mentioning it.
Yes, this is the era of interdisciplinary research. Now everything is multidimensional. So I really support the research, collaborations, getting education, even different levels, maybe at the same time with a minor or in a consecutive way. But I totally support the interdisciplinary approach.
Thank you very much. And now let's get a little bit back into the past. I'm very curious to see what did you want to be when you were growing up and how does your current career align with those childhood aspirations? Is there any relationship between one and another?
I guess my interest in life sciences began at high school. I was interested in science and philosophy or the STEM fields. I guess I was asking what is consciousness, how we think, self awareness, perception. I guess those questions led me to pursue this kind of career. During my undergrad years, I was taking astrophysics courses, philosophy courses, not programming. I did that too. But these kind of STEM courses help me a lot to digest different aspects of brain, I guess.
Mhm. Thank you. What specifically triggered your interest in neuromodulation approaches? Why did you choose to specialize in this area?
Before I start my PhD, I didn't know much about neuromodulation. First, I start attending surgeries with my professor. And the first time I saw that electrical stimulation can stop tremor in a patient, I was fascinated. I mean, these people suffering from different, symptoms like tremor, bradykinesia, you just press a button and everything is changing for them. Life becomes better. They feel better. They're doing better. I think that's the moment that I'm going to work on this. I will study this.
Yes, thank you so much. Speaking about that, for those who, like you were, who are maybe not very familiar with the field of neuromodulation, can you just give a very brief explanation of what it is?
Of course. According to the International Neuromodulation Society, neuromodulation is the process of inhibition, stimulation, modification, regulation, or therapeutic alterations of activity. This can be electrical or chemical in the central, peripheral, or autonomic nervous system. So it's a broad definition. But when we think about the neuromodulation therapies in the medicine field, it is highly targeted to specific areas of the brain or spinal cord rather than systemic throughout the body, such as pharmaceutical treatment. So it is targeted, it is reversible. So when you stop the stimulation, let's say electrical stimulation, the you can reverse the activity. So it's in comparison to ablation or similar approaches, it is continuous and improving the therapeutic compliance over techniques that rely on fixed intermittent dosing. So it provides bunch of benefits. I guess the most important aspects of neuromodulation is it's reversible. And with advances in the field right now, maybe in near future, it will be even more personalized.
Mhm. Thank you so much. What are some areas of application of neuromodulation? What can we do with it?
Sure. I guess the first neuromodulation experiment started with animals applying, stimulation in frogs' legs or see the responses. But they advanced from that initial experiments, and today we have deep brain stimulation used in Parkinson disease, essential tremor, spinal cord stimulation used in chronic pain conditions. We have vagus nerve stimulation used for many different aspects. There is also non-invasive stimulation approaches for the vagus nerve stimulation. We have transcranial electrical stimulation, magnetic stimulation, and both invasive and non-invasive approaches. Epilepsy, we have cortical stimulation, invasive approach. Yeah, pretty much that's all I can come up with.
Thank you. And
I started working with deep brain stimulation in Parkinson disease and more in general movement disorders during my PhD. So, a brief background information. So, in deep brain stimulation surgery, an electrode is placed inside the brain. And this electrode, there are two stages. The first one is using very thin electrodes to map the area, determine the optimal region to put the chronic electrode. And chronic electrode is little bit bigger compared to this targeting electrodes. And when you place this electrode in the right area, you can send the stimulation and you can immediately see the response to this stimulation. Working on target localization using these neural signals, how we can put the electrode in an optimal place, how we can use these neural signals to give a feedback to the neurosurgeon or neurologist in terms of interpreting the outcomes of the stimulation. I started working in these aspects, and with my postdoctoral training, I continue working in DBS field. I also, focus on phenotype, coming up biomarker discoveries in Parkinson disease patients, and determine if there are different phenotypes that we can understand by looking at the neural signals. Later on, my interest moved to switch to spinal cord stimulation and chronic pain because I didn't know at the time that chronic pain is such a big problem, not in only in the United States, but globally. It's a major issue, and I realized that, especially from the signal processing aspect, there are many questions that need to answer in the field, and it just triggered me, and I started working in pain and spinal cord stimulation. In comparison to DBS spinal cord stimulation, in spinal cord stimulation, we put the electrode over the spinal cord, not into the brain. So there are some differences between two techniques, especially from the surgical perspective. You are putting the electrode over the spinal cord, but there are still some stages that you need to map the area because you need to make sure that you put the electrode in the right place or according to patient's pain etiology or location, severity, and so on. In the next stages, there are many questions coming up, such as, okay, we are putting this electrode in the right place, but not every patient is responding the treatment in the same way. So how we can improve the patient treatment, how we can improve patient lives. So actually, my current research is focusing on neural marker investigation in chronic pain patients and improve their neuromodulation treatment.
mhm. So I can see you are focusing on invasive stimulation, yes, of the brain previously and then spinal cord. What are the advantages or disadvantages of invasive stimulation versus non-invasive?
Challenges and risks lie in the surgical approach because invasive neuromodulation treatments there is a surgical step and it carries its own risks and challenges. In non-invasive approaches, of course, compared to invasive, less risks. There are other challenges such as you have to apply the stimulation overhead. So there are, if it's a deep structure, you have to apply a focal stimulation. So you need to do more research to how to improve the applying neuromodulation in the right area without interfering or stimulating the neighboring structures and inducing side effects. I think every approach has its own challenges and limitations.
Yeah. And what would be advantages? Why would we want to do invasive stimulation? How can this help patients?
I guess that we still need to do lots of research in non invasive approaches. Let's think about the transcranial magnetic stimulation, right? You have to be in the room to get that stimulation. So, mobility might be an issue. Studies show that the stimulation may last maybe a couple of weeks, but still, you need to come to the clinic and receive the stimulation on a regular basis. Invasive approaches, the stimulation generator is implanted in the body so you can continue your life. I think one difference in comparison to non invasive approaches might be that.
hmm Thank you so much. And I want to congratulate you on your recently received the prestigious Kumar Award at the North American Neuromodulation Society, NANS. Can you discuss the research project or contribution that earned you the Kumar Award and what impact you think it has had on the field of neuromodulation?
Thank you. I started working in that project as a postdoc. So it is an Hill Initiative supported project, and we tested a novel spinal cord stimulation electrode. It was the first stages of designing this novel electrode. First, we needed to show this is safe to place. Of course, there were some animal cadaver research, everything. But next stage, we need to show this safe to place in humans, and it is compared to commercially available systems. It has disadvantages or disadvantages. We tested all these steps. I guess two major advantages or two major outcomes from this research. We show that with using this high resolution, wider electrode in chronic pain patients show higher resolution. What does it mean? When you put the electrode over the dorsal column, you have some limitations. You can only go to up and down or right and left as much as the electrode allows. We use a larger electrode, which allowed us to go up and down, right and left in a more flexible way. And we used advanced signal processing techniques, and we mapped the dorsal column by looking at the motor responses in these patients in the OR. And we showed that, okay, this electrode has some advantages in terms of activating lower extremity muscles in comparison to commercially available systems. And this may provide in future a better advantage to stimulate focal pain or target focal fibers over the dorsal column.
Thank you so much. And speaking about reduction of pain by using stimulation, how does it happen? What are the mechanisms? How can we reduce pain by stimulating?
I think that is the biggest question. We don't know really. I mean, we have hypotheses, we have we have evidence for certain aspects of it, but we don't have a clear answer. It works this way or that way. Hypotheses show that there are several pain pathways in the brain, and these are related to also spinal mechanisms. One pathway is described as the lateral pathway related to discriminative aspects of the pain. Another pathway is medial pathway, more related to cognitive or affective components of the pain. We know that pain is multidimensional, it is subjective, and most importantly, and I guess this is the biggest challenge in the field, we don't have objective markers to assess the pain. We can only ask patients when they come to the clinic, please rate your pain or fill out this survey so we can understand the effect of pain in your life, on your sleep, or maybe your mobility. But we cannot just measure something and tell, okay, this patient has pain between 0 and 10 at 8. So this is a severe pain. We don't have that objective metric yet. And I think this is the biggest challenge in the field.
Yeah, so this is actually what I wanted to ask you. That was my next question. What is the current state of development of neuromodulation methodologies, and what are some of the main challenges that need to be addressed to improve their effectiveness?
I think I can comment on the research that I'm doing. So in spinal cord stimulation field, as I mentioned, the biggest challenge, at least to assess the pain, is lack of objective markers. There are also other challenges which is related to this aspect. So the pain is multidimensional and it has different components. currently in the field, there are different technologies like dorsal root ganglion stimulation, newly introduced to the field, valgus nerve stimulation, spinal cord stimulation. There are also non-invasive approaches, peripheral nerve stimulation, so on and so forth. Clinical studies show in most of the methodologies improvement in patients' pain, but we don't really know which one works better or which one we should use in which kind of conditions. I guess this is depending on many factors, maybe surgeons' experience, patients' anatomical aspects, even insurance type. Maybe your insurance is not covering one device or the another, and this is another decision point. It's not scientific, but it is still a decision point in the pipeline. We are currently using different modalities to assess the intervention's effect in patients from different perspectives. I guess in the next decade or so, we will know way better about how the systems work and how we can modify them in a better way, how we can personalize them. I think deep brain stimulation field is compared to SCS in terms of personalization is more advanced because there are closed loop systems currently in use, especially, for example, in essential tremor. Studies show that stimulation, or also in epilepsy, stimulation can be modified with respect to patients' neural feedback. But I will say we don't have it quite yet in SCS, but we have a closed loop system which is using spinal level evoke potentials to close the loop. Long story short, but we don't have the brain components in picture yet.
Mhm. Okay, thank you for letting us know about that. What are some of the biggest innovations in the field of neuromodulation that you've seen in recent years, and what impact do they have on patient care?
One of the biggest need in the field is MRI compatible neuromodulation systems. Currently, we have either one or two systems. With MRI compatible neuromodulation systems, we can get EEG together with MRI, fMRI data when the patient is in the scanner, and we can actually test the stimulation effect real time. Because currently, we can record EEG when the stimulation is on without problem because EEG is compatible with these systems, but MRI was a big issue. And if you look at the imaging studies, you would see that most of the results are measuring before or after, not during the stimulation because of this incompatibility aspect. I guess it's a big step forward in terms of understanding the neural mechanisms related to stimulation.
Thank you very much. And now I'd like to ask you about your lab. So you have your Telkes lab. What kind of research are you and your team currently working on? And what challenges or problems are you addressing in your research?
My lab is under still construction.
Okay.
So I'm looking for people to work with. I have some students volunteer to work with me, but I guess the biggest challenge I have is to show that this is an interdisciplinary field. I need math students, I need engineering students, I need science students. We can come together and solve the problem, right? And because the thing I do is using these different approaches, and not one person can just solve the whole big question. And more in general, my research is focusing on understanding the neurophysiological mechanisms of disease, such as chronic pain and movement disorders, identify neural markers of the disease, and develop computational tools for clinical applications such as brain and spinal mapping, target localization, or data visualization, and develop new technologies to improve treatment in patients with neuromodulation implants, as we mentioned, deep brain stimulation and spinal cord stimulation. So hopefully Telkes Lab will address at least some challenges in the field and we can provide better treatment to patients. So we are doing clinical research. We are closely working with neurosurgery and neurology departments. We have a new initiative at FAU Health Network. So hopefully it will bring an academic healthcare to South Florida and we can help more people in a more robust way.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to know that there is this initiative in Florida. Speaking about the research, I know that you also received the K99R00 award. Yes, so early career development award. Congratulations on that as well. Can you tell a little bit more about that, and what do you think helped you to actually receive this award? Because I know it's very competitive.
Thank you. So K99 award is a career award. It's a 5-year award. You get support as a postdoc for 2 years, and then as an independent researcher in another 3 years. So it's a 5-year grant. It helps you to build your lab research program and try to address the scientific questions you ask. More specifically, with this grant, I'm trying to develop objective markers using EEG in chronic pain patients with spinal cord stimulation implants and use these markers in decision making, clinical decision making. What does it mean? We don't have objective decision making tools in terms of device selection. Yes, we have well established ground rules for patient selection, but still device selection, stimulation selection, after the surgery, programming selection, or how to alter the program over the years, we don't have any objective metric to do so. So my research is focusing on developing these objective metric to be used in these different stages of the chronic pain treatments.
Yeah, thank you so much. You also mentioned that you have some volunteers, some students working with you, and you will be recruiting more people as your lab develops. What are the main skills and qualities you are looking for in students or in people who work with you, or your future potential employees?
Yes. Since we are focusing on data analysis, I would look for some signal processing background, depending on the level of the entry. Like if it's a PhD candidate, of course, it would nice to have some engineering background, but not necessarily neuroscience background. We can help to build those skill sets over the years. I started my PhD with a neuroscience background, and I, successfully made it. So, signal processing, or I guess I should list the major topics like signal processing, computer programming, maybe machine learning background, or brain computer interface background. These would help a lot, or interest in these fields would help a lot. Some of the medical students, for example, they don't have the programming or these machine learning backgrounds, but they are still working together because they bring other skills to the table. They contribute manuscript writing, research, how to interpret the results from the medical perspective, these kind of things.
Yeah, thank you so much. What advice would you give to students or young professionals interested in pursuing a career in neuromodulation, neural engineering, and what do you think are the key skills they need to have for success in this field?
If I knew better when I was, younger, I would definitely take courses from different colleges. I would build a skill set in. Of course, it depends on your career plans and choices, but especially for this field, no matter what, I think signal processing and some machine learning background would definitely make you separated from the others, because the field is going towards artificial intelligence, and this machine learning, signal processing, or big data analysis skill sets would, definitely help in near future for students, researchers to build a career in this field.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion. What was the main obstacle or challenge in your own career development? And
I guess the biggest challenge I had, lack of knowledge about, what I needed to move forward in this field. During my PhD, my advisor was always in the lab. It was a big role model. We weren't just lab meetings weekly, maybe an hour or so. He was always in the lab. He was always showing, techniques or how something works in firsthand. So that would definitely help me a lot. And I think that was a big challenge for me because I didn't know many engineering aspects. And biggest advantage that I had that my advisor was always in the lab because he was very enthusiastic about what he was doing. It was a great role model. Another role model I have in my career is Dr. Plisses. I was a postdoc in her lab, in Albany Med, and she is a great leader. She provided such a great mentorship, guidance, and I'm lucky that I received the mentorship from different aspects. So it helped me a lot. So I would, long story short, I would suggest or recommend students to find the right people to get mentorship, guidance, and work with.
Mhm. So, how is it possible to find the right people? How do you explore? How do you gather this information? How do you do it?
Sure. Okay, let's skip the chance factor, right? So there are some, free platforms I would definitely suggest students to get familiar with. For example, North American Neuromodulation Society (NANS) is organizing journal clubs. I actually initiated one in Neuromodulation Journal Club when I was doing my postdoc in Albany Med because we were such a diverse group. We had engineers, surgeons, neurologists, or statisticians, and I wanted to have a common platform so that everybody can contribute. It had such a great success, and Dr. Plisses and North American Neuromodulation Society supported us to move this platform to a national level. And we initiated NANS Journal Clubs as a webinar series. And with my colleague, Dr. Irina Duff from Johns Hopkins, we co-directed this initiative. She's still continuing doing, and this is a free webinar series. You can either present your work or attend the discussions. Another free and very educative, important platform is International Neuromodulation Society webinar series. You can also get familiar with those. You can subscribe to newsletter, world leading scientists that are presenting or moderating or leading, so you can get more familiar with who is in the field. Another another important platform is neuromodec.org. It is led by Dr. Marom from New York. In this platform, you can stay on top of the recent news in neuromodulation, recent updates, publications, events. You can even check the job postings in neuromodulation field. And I guess through interactions with these platforms, you get more familiar with people in the field, their publications, work, and you get an idea about what you want to do.
Yeah, thank you so much for mentioning those resources because this is definitely something that can help people to get more familiar and stay on top of all the developments in the field. I watched one of your LED sessions on neuromodulation on YouTube. That was very good to get familiar with the research. So I highly recommend our listeners to watch those webinars and participate.
Yeah, those webinars are recorded. Also, videos are shared through the website. You can watch them later if you cannot attend in person. And these webinars targeting fellows, trainees, students, not scientists, researchers in the advanced level. Like that's the important part because the idea is to bring different disciplines together, share the recent improvements in the field, and provide some platform for trainees to maybe interact with the professionals or ask their questions or create future collaborations.
Absolutely. And also, NANS has annual meetings. Yes, the major event in neuromodulation of the year. So we can also recommend our listeners attending those if they want to get more familiar with the field.
Yes, we have this annual meeting every year in mid January. So it's a really great chance to get familiar with Neuromodulation Society. It is a national event. We usually see a bunch of international professionals in the meeting as well.
Yes, absolutely. I know many people whom I know on LinkedIn, they are attending a NANS meeting once a year. I know that you are also active in the society. So, what type of work do you do there? And also, how does it help you with your career and research development?
As you mentioned, I'm a member of education committee and research committee. So education committee, one of the actual initiatives of education committee is this journal clubs. So we are working on guidelines, on educational components, how we can provide more resources who want to be more familiar with this interventions, research. Research committee is relatively new, and we want to provide platform to support some research ideas in the field. Still, it's a new initiative. We are still working on it. There is women in neuromodulation section under NANS. It's very active. And even though it says women in neuromodulation, every year in a meeting, we see lots of men as well. So it's not just for the women, but it's a great initiative to promote women or share their stories and support research at every level. That's a great opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned research and research ideas, although it's new, but you are planning on working on this. I think this is one of the main challenges to develop your own research idea after you transition from a postdoc to already becoming an independent faculty. This is some problem that many struggle with. Some people are trying to still keep doing the research that they were doing with their supervisor, and some are trying to develop new idea. So how did it work for you? How did you come up with this specific area that you are working on now as an independent researcher? What helped you in this process?
I guess I will also touch base your previous question that I skipped. What helped me to get the grants? The first answer, writing this NIH K99 grant helped me to develop the research program that I want to have in future. So that grant mechanism helped me to put my ideas in a more structured manner. How did I get that grant? I used my experience and skill set that I gained in DBS, and I wanted to apply those to SCS field. So that and transition helped me also to get the grant, because one of the aspects of the grant or expectations from postdoc is to gain a new skill set. And working in pain field as a new investigator, but lots of experience in another neuromodulation field helped me to be more successful in terms of securing the grant. They say you never get the grant in your first try. Maybe just a gossip. I don't know, but I tried 3 times and I got it in my last attempt. So through the years, update my plan and my research program over and over again. And now, when I make the transition from postdoc to faculty, at least I know what to do or what my expectations are. I have a timeline, which helps a lot. I guess my recommendations would be to have rough timeline for yourself. Okay, I will start my new job here, and what is my next steps, and when should I achieve these? Of course, you usually continue working little bit in the field that you were trained or close to your advisor or the mentor. But in time, you find your own way, because different interests maybe, but you have a skill set that you can apply to different topics, fields. I don't think it happens very like 90-degree change. I think it happens smoothly through the time.
Yes, it makes sense. There is time for everything to develop. You have a quite recent experience of getting your first faculty appointment, so it's still fresh in your mind. What would be your recommendation for those who are looking for their first faculty position, especially in this field, in the field of neuromodulation, neuroengineering?
Mhm. I guess I was looking for a position where I can collaborate with, physicians in a better way. So that was one of the biggest or one of the major points that I wanted to explore. Working, through collaborations, if there are chances that you can work with different colleges like engineering, business to develop, maybe a startup, or, if you're developing a device, you may want to work with other research platforms, institutions as well. So I was looking for those components, like can I collaborate with neurosurgeons? Can I work with engineering departments? Can I, if when I have a product, can I make this commercially available? These were the decision making points for me.
Mhm. How long did it take for you to land this your first faculty position?
I didn't apply many places. So I think it's a little bit different than many postdocs do because I was a postdoc in Dr. Politis' lab and she was mentor on my K99 grant. We were working together for over 4 years and we just wanted to continue our collaboration in the next stages of our careers. And I made the decision quite soon, maybe in early second year of the grant. But usually the timeline is, apply positions in the second year, during summer. Let's say you have a year, and in 6 months into the year, you can start applying or securing positions. And maybe the last few months, you just, close up your projects, work on the transition to the new position, and write your reports and everything, and submit, get your IRBs, you know, usually the timeline is that way, but I made my transition a little bit sooner than the usual.
Yeah. And what was the most challenging part in this transition for you?
Most challenging part is, I guess, getting familiar with new hospital system regulations, because I'm doing human research, right? And I need institutional review board permission to do research, and I have to submit this IRB review to NIH to initiate my transition. So I think it takes some time to get familiar with all the regulations, trainings, and everything. Uh, Other than that, I think another challenge is, you are in a new institution, you don't know anything, anybody. So meeting with new people, creating a niche, expanding your network. These were all challenges, but I guess you make it in time.
So what was the most exciting part of this transition for you?
I guess seeing the sun in Florida. I'm just joking. I mean, most exciting part, I guess, I opened the door of my lab and it's like, okay, this is my lab and I can ask any questions and I can test all these questions. And it was very exciting. And I see my name on the lab doors. I think that was a big moment.
Yeah, congratulations to you. I'm
Thank
so
you.
happy for you. And can you tell us about innovative new technologies or techniques that are emerging in the field of neuromodulation and that inspire you in your own research?
Yes, I think the most exciting innovation is closed loop systems because currently in the clinic, what we have is a trial and error base. We change some parameters in the device, and patient goes home, stays on that parameters programs for some time until next visit, and in the next visit we just do our initial assessment, subjective evaluation, and either change the parameters or not. So closed loop approaches is a big innovation because it also leads other innovations. For example, smaller batteries, more thinner batteries, MRI compatible systems, smaller electrodes, or more targeted neuromodulation. And closing the loop means you are using some biological feedback mechanism. This can be neural signals, right? In other neuromodulation systems, this can be maybe EKG or motility, these kind of responses. So it's the closed loop systems, I guess, the um, one of the major improvements in the field, and it brings other improvements with stem cells.
And can you just briefly describe to our listeners who are getting into the field what is exactly the closed loop system and give some example, real life example of it and how is it used?
Sure. For example, in deep brain stimulation in Parkinson disease patients have tremor, for example. And in literature, this is shown many, many times that beta oscillations in subthalamic nucleus is a pathological signature of Parkinson disease. And stimulation can suppress these beta oscillations. And studies show that suppression of beta oscillations improve symptoms. So if there is tremor, when you apply stimulation, beta gets suppressed and you are free from tremor. during the stimulation. So what the closed loop system does, it reads the beta oscillations, either strength or the power. And if the beta, of course, there are different decision thresholds, but if the beta band power is above that threshold, it applies stimulation, and the symptoms get better, beta gets suppressed, and until the next reading point. So there are, of course, different points in decision making, how long the stimulation will be on, how frequently the system will read the beta band. I guess roughly it is reading the signal power and returns a decision. And this is, going on in a cycle in time.
Yes, and how would it differ from the system that is not closed loop for the same Parkinson patients?
In the open loop systems, we don't have access to continuous readings of the brain oscillations. Electrode is in the brain, but we are blind to what's happening in the brain. We are turning on the stimulation, and we can only see if patient is getting better or not. So it is still an open loop because we make the decision based on our observations or clinical assessment, not a physiological reading. That's the same phenomenon in spinal cord stimulation. 90% of the systems are open loop systems, and we just ask patient, how is your pain? Can you rate your pain? And when we change the stimulation, that's it. We don't know what's going on the spine or in the brain.
What can become possible with the introduction of these new closed loop systems for patients, let's say with Parkinson's disorders or pain? What are the possible future implications of using those systems?
One of the, especially with COVID, one of the advancements was in telehealth. One company can also program these devices remotely. So maybe in future, you don't even need to come to the hospital. So you can stay in your comfortable house and you can get treatments. That's one advantage with these systems. Another system, from scientific perspective, we get a lot of data from daily life activities. Like we are recording data during the surgery or in the clinic, but it's like a screenshot. Like we just looking at these neural signals in an hour or so visit, right? But with the closed loop systems, we can record these signals continuously while you are, I don't know, cooking, watching your favorite show, listening music, walking, and it tells us a lot of things about brain. It's a really big opportunity. And with the variable systems in the field and their implications in neuromodulation, patients, I think we will have more and more data and, of course, more and more knowledge about brain in future.
Yeah, so it brings me to another question I wanted to ask. How do you see the field of neuromodulation in 50 and maybe, 100 years from now? So really futuristic point of view.
I'm into science fiction, so
Okay.
I can answer from that perspective. Well, if you know better and better about the brain disease, how the disease emerge, if we can develop not only prognostic tools but diagnostic and even early diagnostic tools, maybe we will not even need to implement such an invasive systems in maybe 50 years. Maybe we will solve the problem ahead of the time, or with these novel technologies, maybe non-invasive approaches will be replaced with invasive ones. I think that one of the biggest challenges we have right now is lack of knowledge of various aspects of the disease and brain.
Yeah, thank you so much. And speaking also about the future, what are your future plans in your research?
Sure. My study is still ongoing in chronic pain neural marker development. So in hopefully I will expand my lab and we will develop advanced techniques to develop neural markers. And next step, how can we use these neural markers to help patients, right? Maybe develop medical devices or help or work with, medical device companies to modify their systems. I guess in the next 5 to 10 years, my career goal is to have a major impact in the fields. In terms of helping people.
Mhm. Thank you. And speaking about neural markers, you already did a beautiful work in patients with Parkinson's disease. Yes, so can you tell us a little bit in general for those who are not familiar with neural markers, what are those, why do we need it, and what did you already do in this field?
Sure. So in Parkinson disease, what I did, so I record signals when the patients were in surgery. Insert the electrodes and we connected our system and we record signals from different depths when the electrode is moving down towards the structure. We recorded brain signals when the stimulation on and off, and we look at the signal characteristics. We developed a machine learning algorithm to make a decision in terms of the optimal electrode placement and correlate outcomes with the patient improvements afterwards. So more specifically, the algorithm returns a decision to neurosurgeon. Okay, we have these three electrode paths, but this path is more optimal than the others because it shows more beta oscillations, it shows high frequency oscillations, and when we look at the selection, neurosurgeon selection, algorithm selection, and post surgery improvement, they were all telling us that this algorithm works well and helps the clinical decision making. In addition to that, we also record these signals to decide which stimulation parameter works better for symptom suppression. And also, we look at actually for the first time, my study showed that we can use the brain signals to distinguish the Parkinson disease phenotypes. When we talk about the Parkinson disease phenotypes, we have patients with dominant tremor, we have patients with gait problems, and we have mixed type. In clinic, we have different assessment tools that we can distinguish them, but since we do not have access to electrodes after the surgery, it's not possible to look at the invasive brain signals and distinguish these groups. So during the surgery, we had the chance to access to deep structures, invasive signals, and we record these signals and use different signal processing approaches. And we show that the subthalamic nucleus oscillations can actually help us to distinguish these subtypes. At least during the surgery. Of course, this can help neurologists or physician to select maybe more personalized programming after the surgery, like because studies show that the stimulation for tremor dominant patients are not same with the stimulation that patients with gait problems receive. So this can help us to design more personalized treatment strategies.
Yes, absolutely. And my question is, what does it take to bring this finding to already practical use? Yes, because one thing is to show, demonstrate that something works, and another absolutely different thing to make sure that people start using it.
Mhm. We have always the functional use of whatever we do in the picture, and yes, it works very well. But when we look at how the patients are doing after surgery with respect to that decision, we show that the algorithm guided decision helps more compared to sole image decision making. We can say that multimodality approach works better. And we are actually providing that multimodality approach. And we bring new skill sets, new tools to the operating room or to the clinic so experts, physicians can make more supported decisions for treatment strategies.
Yeah, thank you. And what is one thing, one finding from your research that you are particularly proud of?
In spinal cord stimulation and chronic pain field, our research is pretty unique and I'm very proud of it. We might be the only research group or maybe one of the few research groups that doing this kind of research. And in our publication, we show that, different stimulation waveforms affect the brain oscillations differently. And maybe we can use this to help patients in terms of device selection or program selection. I'm just thinking about the recent review paper. It shows the use of EEG in chronic pain patients with spinal cord stimulation implants. And there are only 7 or 8 publications in that review, and we are one of them. And it's a, I guess, major accomplishment, I can say.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I wish you all possible success in continuing this type of research. What was the most unexpected thing that you found out during your research?
I'm not sure. Nothing comes up.
No worries, no worries. Maybe you can think about most interesting thing that you are absolutely didn't expect. Oh, something that was very interesting for you to find out that you didn't know before and you found it during your research.
Mhm. I guess my initial thoughts about the simulation parameters, I was thinking when we increase the, let's say, frequency or amplitude, receive a linear response, right? But it turns out there's an optimal range or optimal point that if you go below it or above it, it doesn't help in the same way. I think that was interesting. It is not linear, it is more like a wave. I guess at the time I didn't know, and that was an interesting finding. That's why I guess it is important to personalize the treatment, because it doesn't mean if you go high frequencies, it will help that patient. There is an optimal point that can help that patient only. And we are trying to find that point.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And our podcast is called Neurocareers Doing the Impossible. Yes. What seemed to be impossible for you at some point of your research, your career, that eventually became possible? What helped it become possible?
I think I had many points in my life that I thought, okay, this is impossible. I cannot do it. And eventually I made it. But the first one I can say, coming to America and getting a PhD degree in engineering, because I was in Turkey and with a neuroscience or a neuroinformatics background, and I wasn't even thinking about going this far in a different field, just myself. And it was the biggest challenge, and I thought, okay, I cannot do it. It's impossible. And with the help of my colleagues in the lab, our professor, people in the department who went through the same, processes, sharing their experiences and, guiding us helped me a lot to at least overcame that difficulties.
Yeah, thank you. So, what would be your recommendation for those students who are thinking about something as being impossible? How would you recommend to make it possible?
I think the most important thing is to have a great mentor that understand you. It depends on little bit on luck, because sometimes you cannot tell your frequencies will match with someone, right? So finding the right person to mentor you, guide you, I guess one of the biggest factors. Luckily we have many mentorship programs in US, like these societies, for example, North American Neuromodulation Society, International Neuromodulation Society, one of the biggest international engineering societies, IEEE Engineering and Medicine and Biology Society, as well as International Association for the Study of Pain. All these societies provide mentorship programs to every level. Like you can be a fellow, resident, PhD student, postdoc, and you can reach to right people and you can get the right career advices. And I would definitely encourage all the trainees to try to, explore those platforms.
Yeah, thank you so much. And what do you think are some of the most exciting or innovative research areas and questions in the field of neuromodulation so that our listeners would hear about and maybe they become interested in one of those fields?
Especially in the past few years, big data, we heard a lot of about big data. And today, machine learning has become more and more important and also hot topic in the field. Definitely, I would say machine learning in and its applications in neuromodulation field. And before our chat, I just heard that brain computer interface was for this year's engineering topic selected as one of the year's topic. So that was interesting. I guess brain computer interface with the, new knowledge coming from neuromodulation, machine learning fields becoming more and more advanced. I think, yeah, long story short, I would say machine learning brain-computer interface, artificial intelligence, all these in neuromodulation field is getting more and more exciting.
And can you give maybe some examples of how machine learning and AI can contribute or interact with the field of neuromodulation? What are possible areas, possible examples of this type of collaboration?
One of our recent publications in machine learning and neuromodulation field was looking for a bunch of parameters to predict who can be a good responder to the treatment. If the patient will not respond to the treatment well, there is no point go through this risky surgeries or time consuming visits. So what we did was we look at the preoperative, so everything happened before surgery. We look at the pain scores, we look at all the factors that was being used by neurosurgeon or physician or decision makers to select these patients or provide them treatment. And we use advanced machine learning to see if we can distinguish these patients early on. So that was the initial study. And actually, my ongoing study is also focusing on this aspect. I want to use EEG to see if we can predict the responders from non responders. And currently, we have data from different time points, which means before their surgery, during their surgery, and after their surgery. So we will see which time point is a better predictor or a predictor at all. And if we can use this information to help them early on before them undergoing this surgeries and treatments.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also are a beautiful example of transitioning from neuroscience to neuroengineering, neuromodulation, which requires, like you said, more programming skills and knowledge about engineering. I know that many students are now looking into this type of transition. What would be your recommendations, or maybe you can suggest several ways of how to make this transition happen? Is it going to graduate school, to doing PhD, and then what? Maybe there are some particular programs. Is it maybe taking just additional courses that can help with that? So, what would be your recommendation?
Sure. I mean, I think they would all help getting courses if you're an undergrad, getting or maybe getting a 2-year master degree to help you to, make that transition more smoothly. There are online programs, certificate programs, but still you get more familiar with the field and approaches. There are free tools that you can find with a quick search. So these can all help. And as I mentioned before, definitely these society web pages provide different resources, reading material, or links to the right resources. So it would help as well. But if anybody has any sort of doubts or questions, I would say, reach out to the people, just email them, ask them, this is your plans, questions, and what is the best advice they can provide. Because every path is different and it requires different decision making. I guess suggest reaching out to right people and look for the resources provided by these, recognized societies.
Yeah, thank you. And it looks to me, at least at this point, that, like you said, there is no one path. Yeah, so there is not like a quick fix how we can transition from masters in, say, neuroscience into neuroengineering. It's still something that everybody should create dependent on their interest, dependent on the possibilities where they live. And would you agree with that, that it's very individual at this point? It's a custom made program. Oh, I would say.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay. Very good. And now, can you tell our listeners how they can maybe contact you or learn more about the work you do? And we will also add this information to our podcast notes.
Sure. They can check the Florida Atlantic University's College of Medicine webpage. My contact information is on that page. Our lab's website will be available very soon, and stay tuned. Or you can reach out to me through LinkedIn or Twitter. It's just my name and last name, Ilknur Telkes. I don't think there is any other Ilknur Telkes, so it's easy to find.
Yes, so I was looking in PubMed for your publications. I found only one, Telkes. So I
Yes.
think you're very, very unique in that regard. Before we already wrap up completely our podcast, I want to also show our listeners that it's not only about the research. I noticed that all of our guests, they have some hobbies, some interests that help them actually to stay upbeat, interested in life, and also somehow it facilitates the thought process. You mentioned your interest in sci-fi. So, what type of sci-fi do you like? And maybe you see how your interest also facilitates some of your thinking and attitude in your research.
Sure. I'm currently, try to watch all the sci-fi series and movies, right? I used to read a lot. Now I have to admit I don't have that much time to read sci-fi books, but one of the most realistic sci-fi series is Expanse. Sci-fi helps us to think what we don't have right now, but what we could have had. It kind of stimulate your creativity. That's why I like it. I was taking this astrophysics course when I was in undergrad as an elective, and the professor, one of the question assignment was that, okay, you are in this avatar universe and you are traveling from this and that, and how you can manage, without oxygen or so on. It was like asking, okay, use your creativity and come up with a solution, right? And I like that strategy. And currently, I'm not teaching, but I would definitely, incorporate that kind of thought process in my teaching, I guess, style, because it's good to have brainstorming, thinking out loud, and come up with new ideas, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a beautiful approach to teaching. So I'm sure your students will appreciate and it will be very valuable experience for them.
Thank you.
So as we are wrapping up our podcast, is there anything else you would like to mention or discuss, especially in regards to new students or postdocs who are entering this field?
I guess my closing remark would be enthusiastic, open to new ideas, and always try to learn new things.
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful advice, a wonderful note on which we end our podcast. I appreciate you being our guest and all the insights you provided to our listeners and to me. Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure to have you.
Thanks so much, Dr. K.